So the House settlement is approved, and all these schools are now going to have 20 million plus to allocate however they want. How should Alabama do it?
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back into Locked On Bama, AHSA Radio Network's Luke Robinson. That's me. Alabama internet legend Jimmy Stein. That's him. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. We'll talk about FanDuel in just a little bit. I want to thank you every day for being here every day. Thank you, newbies, for being here today. And thanks to everybody for making us your first listen every single day. Be sure to go check out some of the other Locked On programming, by the way, like Locked On SEC. Jimmy's on there about every week. Does a great job. Chris Gordy does a great job. Even Locked On Auburn with Zach Blackerby. Look, it'd be kind of fun to go over there for some Schadenfreude about their offering and getting a commitment from the less heralded quarterback / running back that a lot of people are gnashing their teeth over there. I don't know if he's any good or not. I'm just saying.
We'll be talking House settlement tonight on SEC Squad. I mean, I think it's going to be a popular show because that's a popular topic, and it'll be interesting to hear the takes from the guys from the other teams, right? Although, I mean, these are just different journalists having different takes, but I'm assuming that a Tonight Show hosted by Chris Gordy is going to be primarily about the House settlement and how it affects the SEC and the individual teams.
By the way, and I was victim of this for a little while. When people say the House settlement, it doesn't have anything to do with the House of Representatives.
No. For people who don't know, it is a good question because I have gotten that before. House is just the name of the lawsuit. The name of the lawsuit that results. See, all this. See, so many people think this is just the NCAA's idea, and it's not. This is the result of a lawsuit. The lawsuit is House versus the NCAA, and House weirdly is just the named plaintiff in a class action suit against the NCAA. And House is actually it's a real guy. I forget his first name, Nathan, I think, but he's a swimmer at Arizona State that believed that, hey, now that y'all are saying NIL is legal, I should have gotten NIL money when I was at Arizona State. Y'all say it's fine now. Where's my NIL money? So they got together, filed a class action suit, and the name of the lawsuit is House versus NCAA. And the NCAA settled this lawsuit and two others that got rolled up into it in an effort to end all the madness. But this is the House settlement refers to the settlement of a lawsuit, House versus NCAA, that resulted in this new system that we're all doing. So this was not the NCAA going, we got an idea. This is what we're going to do. No, it's the NCAA going, let's agree to this, because if this case goes to a jury and the jury finds that we should be paying all this NIL money backdated to 2016, we could be bankrupted, and we don't need that. So let's do this, and the plaintiffs ultimately agreed.
And again, for those who don't know, my son goes to Arizona State, so there's another tie-in right there. And just interesting stuff.
Yeah, that an Arizona State swimmer who clearly would not have made bank under NIL anyway.
No,
but he ends up forever famous. It's kind of like
Ed O'Bannon.
I mean, it's the Ed O'Bannon suit. It's a terrible analogy, but Roe v. Wade. Who would have thought those people would end up being part of the American vernacular forever when they're just basically the names of people involved in a lawsuit that ultimately made its way to the Supreme Court and ended up in a landmark ruling. That's exactly what the House settlement is. It's a landmark ruling in a civil case in federal court in Northern California, because that state's never in the news.
All right. So that just dawned on me that you said that. I mean, it's like
I'll try to stay away from, but
I know. But it's kind of hard.
Stay away from it, but it's hard because our TVs are on.
Yeah, I mean, and we're not living in a cave with, Bondo in our ears. But anyway,
sometimes that would be great.
So let's talk about how Alabama should allocate this stuff. Now, athletic director Greg Byrne was on the Mac and Cube show. I guess is that the name of the show?
I don't know if that's what they call it that way, but since we're in the industry with them,
yeah,
they're GMAC and Cube to us.
Yeah,
just like.
Well, he said, this is a quote. He said, We have lived in an unregulated market for the last 4 years. Nothing lasts long term that doesn't have some type of regulation. The steps that have been taken from the House settlement gives an opportunity for us to have a regulated market. Okay, again, I like that. Then he says private donations are going to struggle on that side, but legitimate business opportunities, they'll be okay. You're not going to get $500,000 for showing up for an ice cream shop and putting it out on Instagram anymore. Okay, again, I dig that. And then so he goes on to talk about, everybody's going to have can spend up to $20,500,000 of departmental revenue beginning this year directly with players.
July 1st.
July 1st. And so my question is this. How should Alabama allocate it? Because, look, if you do it mostly football, eventually there may be some type of lawsuit that, hey, you should treat all students the same or whatever. I mean, I'm not saying there's any basis for it, because you can sue anybody for anything at any time. They don't always have basis.
There could be Title IX lawsuits in particular. Sure. You got a feeler coming based on the way the schools plan to divvy up their $20.5 million, because it's going to be extremely similar. We'll talk about that in a minute, but yeah.
So until that lawsuit comes, though, you probably want to fund your cash cow more than anything else. Now, you say, of course you do, Luke. Of course, if you're Alabama. I think where it's going to be interesting is if you're Stanford or if you're somebody like that and you pride yourself in having the most national championships in all sports, among all schools. Yet, if you don't do football, if you don't fund football the most, you're going to stink so bad at football that you're going to lose money for the other sports. It is one of those proverbial catch-22s. You have to fund football more because it is what brings you money. Fencing doesn't bring you money. Rowing doesn't bring you money. Swimming, I'm sorry, Mr. House, does not bring in money. Women's basketball does not bring in money. It might for UConn. It might. I'm still not 100% sure it does. So
that's right.
But basketball brings in a little money. And I've also seen some, and again, I'm throwing all this at you because I want you to go on a rant about it. I've seen some people talk about, what about the non-football sports like Villanova and Georgetown or whatever? Yeah. Aren't they going to have so much to throw at basketball? I guess theoretically, yes. But the downside to that is, since they don't have a football program, they're already lacking in funds from everybody else anyway.
Correct. Yeah, that's a lot to address. First of all, I want to address the last thing first, because there's a lot of confusion over that. The people that are saying, gosh, these basketball only schools have a tremendous advantage to spend $20.5 million on basketball. Well, I just picked out one example because I could find the money. And here's the deal. Gonzaga, no real football, right? I mean, they don't have football, they have basketball, right? Well, Gonzaga's athletic department revenues total, the grand total, before expenses, the grand total of athletic department revenues at Gonzaga is $43 million. That's really small compared to the Power 4 schools, like Alabama. So when you say 20 point, they're not going to spend $20.5 million on their athletes when they only have $43 million to fund the entire athletic department. You can't. So they're not going to be spending a lot more money than the Power 4 schools are in basketball. Now, it is true that a handful of those schools, like Gonzaga, like St. John's, like Georgetown, like UConn, UConn's got some football. It is true that they will do well in this era. They should, because they will probably have a little more revenue share to give out than the Power 4 schools do, just simply because they don't have to pay for football. But like Luke already said, keep in mind, because they don't have football, they don't have the revenue that all the other schools. And for those that don't understand the difference in revenue, put it this way. Kentucky basketball is one of the biggest money-making basketball programs in all of the U.S. Kentucky basketball is a college basketball cash cow, and they don't have nearly the revenue that Kentucky football makes. It has nothing to do with winning and losing. I'm talking about revenue. Football is where all the money is made. So I'm not concerned that all of a sudden Kentucky, North Carolina, and Alabama won't be able to recruit against St. John's and Georgetown and Gonzaga. That's not true. But what is true to an extent is, yeah, they are advantaged a little bit. They may have more revenue share. Alabama and them probably have more NIL money to give out, though, than those smaller branded schools, and football's a part of that. So that answers one thing. In terms of how the money's being allocated, every school, there's no rules. Every school can do it differently. However, all the Power 4 schools are doing it similarly. They've all talked. They've all had meetings that no one wants to be drastically behind or ahead. Luke pointed out 100% correct that football is not where you can fall behind. You can fall behind other places, but you can't fall behind in football, because football is how you're making all the money in the first place. So Alabama is going to spend over 80%, if not 85%, of all of the money on football players. That is a similar number to all the other Power 4 schools. It's not much more. It's not much less. It's just around what all the other schools are doing.
And then 10% on basketball.
Roughly 10%, or maybe a little less. Maybe even, and then
4% on everything else, and 1% is going to come up missing.
I can tell you, 1% disappeared in concessions.
Yeah.
That's what often happens in high school booster programs. But no, so the non-football and men's basketball, they're going to be splitting, I don't know, 5 to 7% maybe. It's a nominal fee, but it is something. It is something if you do the math. It is something. And by the way, here's a huge advantage to all those sports that are they can thank the House settlement for. They're all full scholarship now. Alabama used to have partial scholarships throughout the athletic department. Basically now every athletic scholarship's full. That's not a rule. That's not the reality, but that is what's going to happen at all these places. So now these kids that before had a partial scholarship and no money, now they have a full scholarship and some money. And they're also all eligible to receive legitimate NIL funds, and they all will to a degree. But that's how, and there'll be people that have different opinions about how it should be allocated, and that's fine. In my opinion, you just got to trust Greg Byrne, and you got to trust that Alabama's doing what basically everyone else is doing. And boy, where it gets really tricky, we can spend a whole segment if you want to, some other day, or where it gets really tricky is, okay, now you're getting 80 to 85% of that 20 million is going to football. A lot of people just believe, oh, okay, so you're just dividing it between all the players. No. The players will be paid differently based on starters and reserves, based on who was a 5-star recruit and who wasn't, based on who's a quarterback and who's a safety. And I'm telling you, it's almost like an NFL capologist in terms of fitting it all in. And we talked about it with recruiting and safeties. There's not only a budget, there's a budget for offense and defense. There's a budget per position. This is why you can't, in recruiting, all of a sudden go out and sign the 2 most expensive safeties in the whole country, because now you've blown half your defensive budget on 2 safeties, and you don't have a pass rusher. So that's why it's all very complicated. Thankfully, Greg Byrne and most of the people work at Alabama are extremely smart people.
FanDuel, I love it. You love it. Jimmy loves it. We all love it. I mean, you can't not love it. It's so lovable. The NBA playoffs, they're in full swing. They go back, getting going tomorrow night, and every night delivers a highlight-worthy performance. There's major momentum shifts. There's can't-miss moments, whether it's game-winning shot or a breakout player. There's never been a better time to get in on the action than right now, and that's with FanDuel. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and to win big. And you're asking yourself, how could I win $200 in bonus bet to add to the excitement? All you got to do is win that first $5 bet. That's so easy. If you're new to FanDuel, that is. It's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you get 200 in bonus bets. That's simple. Bada bing, bada boom. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA.
The NBA.
Gotcha.
Wasn't sure whether you're going to be or not.
All right. So ESPN came out with their predictions.
Yeah.
And they're a little bit stinky.
Is this FPI or RPI or some sort of PI? Top 25?
This isn't FPI. This is
playoff predictor?
I think this is just their SEC predictions. What's weird is I didn't see it on their actual site.
I saw the FPI recently, and I think there's some real FPI is not the same as, I think everybody looks at it like it's an AP top 25 or a USA Today coaches USA Today top 25, and that's not what the FPI is. And the FPI, I heard college football nerds talking about this the other day, and they're really smart about this data stuff. But the FPI is based on data. But the only data you can have right now to form a top 25, nobody's played the games. So the data is based on what happened last year.
Yeah.
And let's try to minus out what they lost. And let's try to add in what they're gaining via recruiting rankings. And how are you going to add in what Barryon Brown did at Kentucky? Is that returning production for LSU? When you say, okay, well, this is the returning production. They have a wide receiver. Well, Barryon Brown did rack up SEC stats, but it wasn't an LSU. How does that count? So when you get into that stuff, FPI just is mind-boggling, and I don't think people should look too into it. But Josh over at College Football Nerds, again, they're a very data-driven group over there. He points out that, hey, by mid-season, by the end of the year, the FPI is as good a predictor tool as anything out there because it is data-driven and it's smart and it's good information. But until you get about half the season played, it's not really helpful. But halfway point of the season forward, FPI is a great place to go to find out who's good and who's overrated.
Okay. So they have Texas winning the SEC, Georgia finishing second. They do have Alabama third, which and they have Texas's percentage of winning at 34%, Georgia at 26%, and Alabama at 17%. So it's not like some gigantic gap here. And then there seemingly is a big gap to number 4, which is Texas A&M at only 4%, Tennessee around 4%, LSU 3%, Ole Miss practically 3%, and Auburn practically 2%. I can get down with these predictions. And if it winds up in that way, Alabama's in the playoffs. And if we don't, again, I hate saying this as much as anybody else. And Jimmy, one day this summer, I want us to, because I saw this on BOL and I thought it was a great idea. I want us to rank our favorite SEC championship games. Okay. Maybe we only do our top 5. We could do all, I think Alabama's been in 15. We could do all 15. I'm fine with that. But I want to do the favorites because there are a lot of good ones to choose from. But I hate saying this. I'm fine not making the SEC championship game because it's just another game to get hurt and get in the way of a run to a national championship.
Yeah, I mean, on the one thing, if you win the SEC, you're in the playoff. I mean, I think making the playoff is the thing for Alabama. You've got to make the playoff this year. I would say that when I'm thinking about this season, I think, okay, Alabama's got to make the playoff. You kind of got to. I wouldn't say the same thing about winning the SEC. You've got to be in Atlanta. You've got to win the SEC. You don't have to do that, but you got to make the playoff. Now, I think getting to Atlanta, winning Atlanta is kind of, I would say the gravy on top of the sundae, but that's really gross. And I'm a big ice cream fan. I don't want to mess up ice cream for everybody. So let's say it's
your ice cream.
Yeah. the slaughterhouse. Yeah. I think, like you said, you could get to the SEC championship game. I'm not sure how many SEC fans out there that aren't Georgia fans, if you just ask them, like, real quick off the top of your head, who won the SEC last year? I think a lot of people might say Texas. I mean, people won't remember as much like they used to because it's less. It seems less important. So I'm with you there, but I'll take Atlanta and I'll take a chance. But what Alabama needs to do under Kalen DeBoer in year 2 is make the playoff, even if it means you're the 3rd or 4th SEC team.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not dismayed by that. I mean, in fact, if I were predicting right now, I might even come up with the same thing. Now, in the end, I'm probably going to pick Alabama to win it because I'm the ultimate homer, but I'm okay with that.
I like Texas, Georgia, Alabama, and LSU from the SEC. There's going to be 4 SEC teams.
Fair.
I think Texas, Georgia, Alabama, LSU are the 4 I would pick. I know a lot of Alabama fans in particular, for whatever reason, are as high on LSU. I think some of that is because Alabama so handily destroyed LSU last year, and Alabama fans in particular, for whatever reason, are sort of anti-Brian Kelly.
We also hate Brian Kelly.
Yeah, Brian Kelly. Alabama fans are kind of anti-Brian Kelly. I don't really understand it and don't care, but I get it. I think it'll be those 4. But I mean, he's kind of a
goober. I mean,
he reminds me of, and I don't mean it as an insult. I mean it as just he reminds me of him as Fran. I think there's some Franchoni. Yeah,
there's a little Fran in him.
I mean, in terms of like, he doesn't come across as SEC football coach, kind of like that's the guy that's going to lead 85 alpha dogs to go, and
he did leave a very traditional power, one of the most traditional powers, to go to one that is traditional, but I mean, historically
kind of a weird fit for him. Fit means a lot.
And Franchione couldn't have been a weirder fit.
Ed Ogeron was not winning a national championship anywhere on this planet Earth but LSU. I would even go so far for people saying I'm picking on LSU. I might go so far as to say that might have been true of Gene Stallings, who was a perfect fit at Alabama. Stick him at Tennessee. Is he winning the national championship? Wake Forest, A&M, Tech, maybe A&M because he's from there. I don't know. I'm just saying that some people are perfect fits for a place. And if the Brian Kelly thing ultimately doesn't work at LSU, I'm not going to believe he's a bad football coach. I think he's completely proven in that area. But bad fit is what I would say, not bad coach, because he accomplished too much at Cincinnati and Notre Dame for me to think he's a bad football coach.
He's going into year 4 with LSU.
This is year 4.
I mean, one SEC championship appearance where he got blown out, and that's it. I mean,
but also 10, I think 10 and 9 wins and a Heisman. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying it's not. I realize LSU expects more. I know Alabama fans would want more. LSU fans want more. Ask Auburn how they'd feel about 10 and 9 wins, by the way.
I mean, yeah, that's 19 wins over 3 seasons. I bet Auburn's got
29
that over the last 4 seasons, right? Or 29. I said
29. So
29. Really, I bet Auburn's got that over the last 4 seasons.
It's 10 wins. It's 10 wins a year. And I think, didn't we read somewhere Auburn's had like 10-win seasons, I don't know, 8 times or something ever?
Oh, I don't think they've had 8 10-win seasons.
That's what I mean. LSU's done it, and at the same time they're going, this guy sucks.
Auburn's never had back-to-back 10-win seasons or something like that, or they've only done it once.
That's what I'm saying. I think Brian Kelly's tenure has been a little like, but hey, I get it. I mean, you won a national championship with Les Miles. Then you won one with Orgeron. You're like, and this guy can't win one? I get that. I get it. But Orgeron was just a perfect fit. Les Miles inherited Nick Saban. Brian Kelly just sort of had to build it from scratch a little bit because Orgeron did leave a mess. After he won the national championship, he went all Leo DiCaprio.
By the way, ESPN Game Day has picked Texas, Ohio State.
We predicted
again, I'm fine with it. And it is the first time that Lee Corso ever donned mascot's head. So I get it, except I don't get it in the sense that game's going to be on Fox at 11 o'clock. So it just if I were ESPN, I would have gone either to LSU, Clemson, or Bama, Florida State. That's what I would have done. Florida State probably because Scooter Lee Corso went to Florida State.
Yeah, my game day source. I mean, his quote, on or off record, but I mean, his quote is look, if we're the premier show, we have to be at the premier game.
Fair, because if the one time you don't do it, people will start saying, they don't really ever go to the best game.
Or they don't want to take on Fox. They don't want to take on Fox. They don't want to take on Big Noon. Instead, they're like, we're the biggest show. Big Noon should be worried that we're coming.
That's right. All right, we got to quickly get into your roster rankings. Luckily, we're still in the 50s, so these go pretty quick.
Yeah, and 51, Jay Lindsey. Look, Jackson Marco was yesterday, and Jay Lindsey stayed. No coincidence. Having back-to-back. To me, I find them very tough to separate. I put Lindsey ahead just simply because he's been at Alabama, and he was sort of spent a lot of the spring as the number 1 tight end. Super high on Jay Lindsey. Let's remember, somebody asked the other day on BOL, just a random question. It was really good. Has there ever been a superstar player at Alabama that played at a 1A school? And gosh, I would have been so good at that question 10 years ago when my brain worked better. And I could probably spit out a few. And I know there's a few answers out there. But my point to that is Jay Lindsey's not a superstar yet. He played a school probably smaller than a 1A school. I mean, this is a small AISA private school, Patrician Academy. It's just this tiny school. It's not even a 1A school like Pickens County, in Reform, where we signed Tony Dixon. We've signed Jamarian Latham, Michael Williams somewhere up there. This is an absolutely tiny dot on the map. So because Lindsey had such a huge step up in competition, massive, can't even really be described, what year should we expect him to be ready to contribute? I would say giving the kid a break, I would say give him to year 3. And this is just year 2 for Jay Lindsey. I think he's really good. I think a good comp here is Robbie Oost and what Robbie Oost was able to do for Alabama. And look at Robbie Oost getting drafted, 5th round pick by the Seahawks. They're excited about him in Seattle. They've even intimated already that he's going to have a role with the first team in a roving fullback H-backs type way. I think Jay Lindsey can be Robbie Oost at least, but I also think he's probably more like a year away. I still think Josh Cuevas and Danny Lewis play the most snaps at tight end. I think Brody Dalton, the 5th-year senior transfer, he's going to be in the mix. There's your 3. Now, I do think there is room for a 4th because Alabama plays multiple tight end packages. There's room for a 4th. Will it be Samarco, who we talked about yesterday, the West Virginia transfer? Will it be Jay Lindsey? I'll go Lindsey, but I'm going a little homer here because he's kind of been with us from day one. And I just like Lindsey. I know more about him, long term. But I think the 4th tight end probably plays with the ones, 10, 12 snaps a week. And that's valuable. Hey, if you take any snaps with the ones while the game is in doubt, you're a significant player. And I think Jay Lindsey might be a significant player this year, but I do think it'll be year 3 next year when he really becomes kind of a mainstay at the tight end position for Alabama.
Now let's talk about weekend visitors. We will get in more detail as the week goes on, but right, the names are Arrington, Abrams, Voss, Wingo, Golden, Zaire, and Walbridge. Now the Walbridge one I'm not very familiar with.
Marky Walbridge. He's an offensive lineman from Massachusetts. The weird thing about him is got a pretty decent offer list, mostly Northeast schools, the Penn States, the Notre Dames. This guy, even though he's from Massachusetts and an offensive lineman, he apparently is impossible to get on the phone. His people, he has one of the quietest recruitments in the whole country, yet he's being recruited by several power programs. It's just been real quiet. Nobody has any idea who leads. You can only know he's visiting by, tracking visits, real quiet recruitment, but Penn State wants him. Notre Dame wants him. That's all I need to hear to know. Okay, well, you certainly kick the tires on that guy if he's a lineman that Penn State because by the way, traditionally Penn State Notre Dame very good up front year after year, and they like him. So you at least kick the tires on that. I think this upcoming weekend we find out as far as Walbridge, how much does he like us? How much do we like him? Hey, as much as you might say, what's that tell us? That's telling us nothing. No, we said the same exact thing last week about Brian Williams, and then boom, we find out not only does Alabama like him, he likes it. He might be choosing Alabama over his in-state Florida Gators and could be on the cusp of making a commitment. So I would say Walbridge sort of in that same boat as Brian Williams, both sides just trying to figure out the other in terms of, is this somebody we want? And if we do, you want to play here? That's what these visits are for.
And finally, just something very quickly, because we will talk about those weekend visitors later on this week. But Caleb Holt, unofficial visitor yesterday, checked out practice. Now, by the way, for those not on Bama Online, there is an insider, Mac 92, who does, for those who know who he is, great. I'm not going to reveal his name just because, but he was singing the praises of Bethea. And
we'll just say that he knows. We can vouch.
He knows his
cred.
stuff.
We vouch for his cred.
Promise.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
That's not just us validating through the internet. I'm telling you that the guy's got his finger on the pulse. Okay. But
this is like a Hollywood insider saying there is going to be an Only Murders in the Building season 5. I just saw that inside. I just saw that inside scoop from a Hollywood insider this morning, so it made me think of that. I saw Hollywood insiders. That's true.
There's only murders in the building.
That's 5 people been apparently. I mean, well, to be honest, I've only watched the first 3 seasons, so I'm through 3 murders. Yeah, it's amusing. It's not okay. It's not.
But then
it's amusing.
He said Noah Williamson getting better every day. I like that comment. I think that's a very fair comment. That's how you also know when a guy knows what they're talking about. He's not like, this guy's going to take the SEC by storm. He's like, yeah, he's getting better. He's going to be fine by the time it comes around. And then by the end of the year, he'll probably be pretty good. But right now, he's getting his feet wet. But the biggest thing to know is Caleb Holt, formerly of Buckhorn. I think he won 2 straight state championships with Buckhorn. Then he transferred to Georgia. Grayson, I believe. Was it not Grayson?
That sounds right.
Okay. And now he's transferring again to Prolific Prep.
Alabama's had some success recruiting there, right? And that's Aiden Sherrill and Darion Reed, right?
And he says, some people say, well, I don't like guys hopping around. Well, that's what they do now. I mean, because high schoolers are getting that bag dropped too. So
yeah, LeBaron Philon hopped around. Now, see, these high school kids can start taking NIL money, and in high school, you can't in Alabama. That's why Caleb Holt moved. So he can,
Caleb Holt moved,
so he can start collecting NIL money. Hey, I like it better than the kids reclassifying and screwing up their careers. I'm kind of, as y'all know, I'm a cold, wet blanket on the reclassification thing. You don't throw Ryan Williams in my face like he's the exception to the rule, and we have a whole podcast about Ryan Williams here, and we love Ryan. But if they were all Ryan, I never would have opened my mouth about it. But the fact of the matter is, Ryan's a rare breed.
Now, this is one of those guys that I've had the pleasure of calling in a state championship game. I've seen him play in a couple of state championship games. He is a Ryan Williams type. And in my opinion, where if he reclassified 2 years ago, he could have helped the University of Alabama.
That's amazing.
I am not saying that facetiously.
No, that's amazing.
I said the same thing about Ryan Williams after I watched him destroy Mountain Brook in the state championship game in Jordan-Hare Stadium, ironically. I said, whoever gets this guy, this is when he was a sophomore. I said, he could go right now and play at Alabama, and he would get legitimate, real, not buckets. Screwing around snaps.
That's crazy. Well, buckets.
And that's what I really thought. Now, of course, we've all said that being facetious, but I'm telling you, Caleb Holt is a dude's dude. He has been built like some kind of action figure since he was in the 9th grade. He was getting rebounds before they were missed. I know that sounds weird, but it's like he knew where it was going when it was shot. Not like, oh, I'm checking out the trajectory and my mind's working at 1,000,000 miles a minute. No, his instincts are incredible. His length is incredible. He can play in high school. He played about every position on the floor. Now, in college, he's not going to be center. But I'm telling you, if you're a center and you go up and dunk against him, don't be surprised when he sends it right back to your mama.
Yeah, I've heard Luke's going wild on the Caleb Holt eval. I've heard at least one other person say that in terms of pure basketball talent, he's arguably the most talented kid from the state of Alabama ever. Now, that seems so over the top to me, but the person who said it's not an over the top person and kind of knows ball. So Luke's not the only one effusive in his praise for the kid's straight up skills. He's just going to be hard to sign. Why? Because a kid that talented is going to command quite a bit, in terms of financially, and you got to make the financials work. And you can't have a team where you have Caleb Holt and then 10 guys that you talked out of going to West Alabama.
If Alabama is going to use 10% of the $20.5 million on basketball, we're going to have to give Caleb Holt 98% of that 10%.
I'm for it. And everybody keep in mind too, when they're doing the mathless revenue share and they're like, hey, that doesn't sound like all. Keep in mind, it can be supplemented by NIL. The NIL just has to be legitimate, and Alabama and Yay Alabama are working on making Yay Alabama the best collective in the country when it comes to accumulating legitimate NIL deals for the athletes at Alabama. That's what they're working on.
I'm going to put it this way, and then we can leave. Y'all remember how Dylan Moses looked in the 8th grade when I think he committed to LSU in the 8th grade?
He did.
Pretty famously.
Primarily running back.
And you thought, oh my God, that looks like Ashawn Robinson's uncle. And you were like, that guy looks 1,000 years old. And he's just cut up like you wouldn't believe. That's Caleb Holt. When he was in 9th grade, I looked at him and I thought, I was more like that Bare Naked Lady song in grade 9. Did you ever, I got my locker and I got my classes. I lost my books and I broke my glasses. That was me in 9th grade, very uncoordinated, no definition. I have no definition now, but like, I'm talking like Caleb Holt is different. Yeah. And I know
he's probably shaving when he was 6.
There's no question. There's no question.
He was like
all right.
a grown ass man in the 3rd grade. I mean,
He was probably
some
using
kids were
terms
like
like
that.
grown ass man.
We offered a kid. I'm not gonna name. We offered a kid the other day. We offered football. Offered him a scholarship. I'm looking at a kid. Going, God, he could pass for. I mean, other than his size, he could pass for 12 years old in the face. But that's like the glaring exception because most of these kids are more like Holt. They're shaving before they were.
He's different, y'all. And I'm not saying we're going to get him. I'm saying y'all need to be praying we get him. So, all right, that's going to do it for this episode. We'll be back tomorrow morning. Until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll Tide.